This project will require very minimal materials, including these couple of pieces of plywood. You're going to get started by sizing the shelf that holds the chargers. I'm going to use the charger itself as a reference material versus measuring. This line that I'm scribing right here is actually the place where I'm going to cut this large piece in half. And I'm going to do that by cutting it at a 45-degree angle, which will allow me to put the back piece and the shelf piece together, which you'll see later in the video. Now, these little Wixie gauges are really cool, and they're really nice for setting up accurate angles on your table saw. Now that I got the angle all set up, I used a scrap piece, a piece of the French cleat material to get the right height. Now I have my two pieces. As I said before, I'm going to join these two pieces using that 45-degree angle. I'm going to put a little bit of glue here and just some brad nails. Interestingly enough, I actually won this brad nailer on an Instagram contest. First time I ever won anything on one of those. Now I'm basically cutting this small piece of 1/4-inch plywood in half to establish the piece that's gonna make the two sides of the shelf. Now this doesn't have to be cut exactly in half, and I went ahead and trimmed it up using the stops on my miter gauge to make sure that I had relatively even sides. So I'm going to go ahead and add some shape to the side pieces, which is really not necessary, but I just thought it would look a little better than having these awkward angles jutting out into space. So I'm using a French curve here to arrive at something relatively pleasing. And I taped the two pieces together so that I could cut them at the same time, like you see me doing here on the scroll saw, which is a tool I don't use very often, but when I do, glad I have it. So while I have them taped together, I went ahead and knocked the edges off a little bit with some sandpaper. And then we'll go ahead and attach them. Now these pieces are really there just to reinforce that 45-degree joint, because the only thing I really used to put it together was glue and a couple of brad nails. But with these two side pieces, which are basically acting as gussets, I think that'll make it pretty sturdy. Again, I'm gonna use some brad nails to secure the piece while the glue dries. Yeah. I'm using this small strip as a stop to keep the charger from falling off the shelf. And I'm going to use the shelf itself as a reference point versus measuring. And then I'm going to use the disc sander to put a quick round over on the edges, just to, make it neat and tidy. Now I'm working on the French cleat, which is the method by which I'm going to hang it on the wall. Go ahead and cut that to length. I'm cutting a small strip off of this piece as a spacer for the bottom of the unit below the French cleat to keep the unit parallel to the wall. Now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and start laying out a hole for the cables to pass through. And I'm going to use a spade bit to define the two edges to give me a nice oval hole. And then I'm going to use a jigsaw to connect those two holes together to make the pass through. go ahead and connect your French cleat to the back of the unit using glue. I'm going to use a few brads to hold it in place, and then I'm going to secure that with a couple of screws. And then attach the spacer with glue and brads. Attach the stop to the front. Again, glue and brads. And then I'm going to go ahead and pass the cables through, zip tie them, and screw them to the bottom. I've also attached a power strip. I'm going to go ahead and hang this on the wall using an existing French cleat. And then I'm going to plug it in. And there you have it. A really simple, easy to build charging station out of materials you probably have sitting around in the shop right now. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you like and subscribe. And again, thanks for joining me in my shop, Dreadnought, and make something.